Black-owned Media Coalition panel discussion and debate with our candidates here. District B, Jay Banks and Leslie Harris, thank you so much for coming. I also want to introduce our panelists. That is Jeff Thomas of Think 504. We also have CeCe Campbell Rock of Data News Weekly, and of course,
The Louisiana
Weekly. Please excuse me. And this is Terry Jones of the Data News Weekly. You know I know that.
I used to be with him too.
Okay, so this is. Let me go start again. This is CeCe Campbell Rock of everybody. That's who that is. And I am Reagan Sidney from WBOK 1230 AM. What New Orleans is talking about. Welcome to our panelists. And we're going to start with a 3-minute opening for both of you. Of course, ladies first, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited to be here at Xavier University, one of the premier institutions in New Orleans. I'm happy to be with the Black-owned Media Coalition. I'm the only candidate who was endorsed by all 3 Black publications in New Orleans. So I really appreciate that endorsement. I'm also endorsed by the Democratic Party, Councilperson Helena Moreno, Congressman Troy Carter, and many other voters in this district. Over 55% of voters, 55% of voters voted against Councilman Banks. So I just want to keep that in mind. The voters are behind me. We have new energy and new vision. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I came to New Orleans in 1999 to attend Tulane Law School. I'm originally from a small town in Ohio, grew up with not a lot of money, but was pushed by my parents, my mom, my aunts, to go to college at the University of Virginia. And so I feel like I'm a self-made person. After leaving Tulane Law School, I was recruited to go to Stone Pigman, which is one of the oldest law firms in New Orleans, and I became only the second Black female partner at that law firm. I've represented clients like the New Orleans Saints, like NBC Universal, but I'm also proud of the work that I did with Black-owned businesses, culture bearers, including artists, Mardi Gras Indians, and other folks in our community. In 2018, I was recruited to become Chief of Staff at Loyola University, Chief of Staff to the first female president, Tanya Tetlow, and there I was put in charge of helping right the university's financial difficulties. I was put in charge of disaster management, including hurricane planning, and I was affectionately known as the COVID Queen because I was the person tapped to write policies when COVID hit the university to ensure that our students, faculty, and staff stayed safe. And I'm proud of the work that I did because it required me to talk to all of the constituents at Loyola. I plan to work hard for the constituents here in New Orleans, in District B, and I welcome the questions that you have.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for having me. My name is J.H. Banks, and I have the honor of being the councilman from District B right now. I am running for re-election to continue the progress that we have embarked upon. A little bit about my background. I am born and raised in New Orleans. I was born at Sarah Mayo Hospital at Jackson and Annunciation. I was educated in the public schools here, a proud public school graduate, and a graduate of the Dillard University, the other HBCU college here in New Orleans. It is my pleasure to be back here at Xavier with all of you all. I know you all have been working with you all for years. And the reason I point out the fact that I know you all have been working with you all for years is because commitment is not theoretical. Commitment is not something that someone should develop 15 minutes before they qualify. Commitment has to be demonstrated, and it should be long-term. I've got a lifelong history of working in this community to help make it better. I've only used the city council platform to extend that. Now, I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we made. I have not spent a lot of time bashing my opponent. I think they're all fine. Well, at this point, she's fine people and great. But at the end of the day, the truth be told that we've got to talk about what we're going to do and what we've done and not spend time on bashing each other. My whole campaign has been talking about the progress that's being made. Since I've been the councilman in District B, $2 billion, that's billion with a B, is being invested in the streets of District B. We haven't spent $2 billion on the streets in District B since 1960, cumulatively. But under my leadership, that is what's happening now. I'm very excited about the progress that we're making with the criminal justice system to close the loophole on the revolving door, because having a justice system that doesn't function makes us all vulnerable. When we talk about fighting crime, it is a holistic approach. You have to have not only police, but all of the other systems have to work in concert to make sure that it all happens for the safety of the citizens. So I will happily engage in this debate and answer questions and tell you about what I've done and where I'm going, and I respectfully ask that the voters look at what's real and what's not, look at my record and compare that to anybody else's record, and I think they'll make the right decision and vote for me for city council re-election.
Thank you both. Jeff Thomas.
So what is the biggest challenge in District B? And what are your priorities if you are elected or re-elected in the district? I guess we'll start with Ms. Harris.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. My priorities are twofold. There's crime and infrastructure. Let's talk about infrastructure first. If you drive the streets of District B, and I do all the time, the infrastructure is terrible. There are projects where the streets are being dug up and they're left for months, if not years. I live on Barone Street, and I live what I like to call the next to the Big Dig, which has been going on for about a year now. There's equipment out there, there's supplies, but there are no workers out there. I just got a video from a constituent who actually contacted Mr. Banks' office because he's lived in the Irish Channel around construction that's been going on for 22 months and has tried to get in touch with Mr. Banks' office to no avail. He's trying to figure out what's going on, what is the status of projects. So I think we need to fix critical infrastructure, and we can do that by requiring our contractors to dig in an orderly manner, to finish a project, not to just dig it up and leave it for a year or many months. 22 months is a long time to be living around construction. We also need to focus on the traffic lights. If you get on town, the traffic lights are blinking. Why are they blinking? What's happening? These questions need to be asked, and City Council has a role to play in that. They control the budget. And like anyone who gets an allowance, so think of the City Council budget as an allowance. When you get an allowance, it was because you were doing things right. And if you didn't do things right, then your parents took that allowance away. City Council can take the allowance away from these contractors to require them to do their jobs or else cancel the contracts. They can also call the contractors in to City Council and say, what is the status? But practically, I think we need to implement real-time construction trackers so we all know when a project's supposed to start, what the status is, and the end date. That's a simple thing that other cities have, and that's something that we need to get here in New Orleans. I'm hoping there's a crime question coming up. I'm not sure what my time is right now. But on crime, 1 minute? 2 minutes, okay. On crime, we need to solve violent crime. We need to support our NOPD officers and first responders. We need to have civilian mental health crisis workers who come out for nonviolent crimes. Right now we have about 1,000 NOPD officers, and we need at least 1,500 to 2,000 to stay safe. I go out and I speak to our police officers. I did Covenant House, Night Out, Sleep Out, and I talked to 2 police officers there. They are understaffed and demoralized, and they are being rotated around the precincts, the districts, so that there's never any opportunity for them to engage with the neighborhood so that they can effectively community police. So we need to increase our dollars to NOPD. We need to have recruitment and retention techniques like partnerships with universities like Xavier, like Loyola, so that our first responders can get additional education if they'd like for free or no cost. We need to look at incentivizing them with affordable housing. And I'm not just talking about our NOPD officers, but I am talking about critical services like EMS and fire. And then there's a prevention strategy as well. So we need to focus on education and providing opportunities to our young people. 30 seconds? And that includes making our young people know that there is something else other than crime out here in New Orleans, that there are opportunities other than crime. Exposing them to tradespeople who are making it, who are making money, having them come on campus to know that there are opportunities in New Orleans.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Harris.
you.
Mr. Banks, same question for you. What are the challenges in the district, and what are your priorities for the district?
Well, the major challenge is we inherited some major problems, and we've got to work to get those major problems addressed. That elephant that we inherited is too big to eat all at once. You got to eat it in one bite. Now let's start with the streets. I'm very excited about the streets reconstruction that is taking place. The fact is that $2 billion is being invested now. Now, the streets were bad long before we took office, but we are no longer kicking the can down the road. What is happening now is they're being repaired. Now, the truth be told is that there is no way to really fix a street without repairing it and digging it up. There's no way to do that. It is inconvenient, but the solace that the residents can take is that once they're fixed, they'll be fixed for generations. Now, I'm very happy to be a major driver behind this coalition that put together DPW, the Sewage and Water Board, all of the players that have to have infrastructure in the street are now sitting at the table. One of the reasons these projects are languishing is because you've got to get everything done at the same time. It used to be, those of you all are from here will remember, it used to be the past practice that the street would be dug up and then 8 months later somebody would come through and undig it because they had to fix something. That doesn't make sense. What we're doing now is once it's open, everything that's under that subsurface is being addressed, which says that those streets are going to stay where they are for a very, very long time. So is it inconvenient? Yes. But the truth is, it is going to be much better when it is repaired. So that is one of the things that I am most proud of and talk about repeatedly, because you cannot have a street repaired without the inconvenience of digging it up. So pretending that it's being dug up is a major part of the problem, ignores the fact that the solution is to dig it up. As we talk about other challenges, when I took office 3.5 years ago, the thing I said I would do first is go over to Sewage and Water Board and try to make that right. Now, is Sewage and Water Board right? No, it's a long way away from being right, but it was bad when we got there, but it is much better now. I'm excited about the fact that I played the major driving role in securing the WIFIA funding. We signed the ordinance at the CEA at the last council meeting. We're going to have the press conference to announce it with Sewage and Water Board and the EPA officials in a couple of weeks. They're coming to New Orleans. That is going to help us stabilize our water system. Now, what has happened, I want you to go back years ago and compare it to now. We just had a Category 4 hurricane, yet there was no major flooding in Orleans Parish. We also had something that has never happened before. Orleans Parish didn't get a boil water advisor. We were in a position to actually send water to Jefferson Parish, who was under a boil water advisory for 5 days. So the facts are that while we are on the road, we are nowhere near finished, but the situation is better. It's not something that you can just snap your fingers and make it all fixed overnight. But the progress is being made, and all of the conditions that we talk about, affordable housing, education, crime, go down the line. None of that matters if we're 6 feet underwater. The major thing we got to get done first is to make sure that water and drainage system is stabilized and can protect us all. I'm excited of the work that I've done with that, and I'm looking to go back to continue that. When you talk about crime, absolutely crime is a major concern. But the truth be told, crime is bigger than the city council, it's bigger than the police, it's bigger than any one entity. It has to be a collective effort. All of the components have to work in concert. You've got to have the police along with the justice system over on Tulane and Broad, the courts, the clerk of court, the judges, the DA. And when you look at the police chief just testified at a hearing how demoralized the police are because they arrest people, and as soon as they get them to jail, they're let out. We've got to get the DA to start functioning as the district attorney to close that revolving door. So yeah, those are challenges. I'm working with the judges now to confect a standard process to determine who's eligible to be released on ankle monitors. That Portia Pollock tragedy should never happen again. I'm tired.
Thank you so much.
I can't look at you. I'm sorry. I can't see the time. I can't see you.
We got you. Thank you.
Well, you tell me because I'm looking at you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And so we are going to take a break right now. You are listening to the debate of the Council District B, the Black-owned Media Coalition. We'll be right back. debate for the council person, District B. We have Jay Banks here and Ms. Leslie Harris. We are gonna go ahead with Ms. CC.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start with Councilman Banks. Councilman Banks, this city has like 25% of our population in poverty. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think one of the contributing factors are the high cost of our electricity, Entergy. And I understand Entergy's been in the news. I know you're on the Utilities Committee. The question is for both of you guys, but what are we going to do, what are you guys going to do if you're elected to deal with Entergy and its 1816 electric grid, which every time we have a hard rain or a hurricane, the poles are knocked down, billions of dollars have to be spent. We're inconvenienced. With Hurricane Ida, I was out of electricity for 8 days, and I had to spend $700 to get a generator. So what are you prepared to do? What's the plan in terms of Entergy?
Mr. Banks?
The plan is to continue to hold Energy accountable and to continue to press them to make those necessary infrastructure improvements. Now, I'm very proud of the fact that I have voted on every single sanction of Entergy that we have had that come before the council, and I will continue to do that. The utility system is one that is absolutely critical, but it has to be run in an efficient manner. Now, when we talk about the cost and the cost burden, it's two sides. The cost of electricity is one side of it, but the other side of it is we have such a disproportionate rate of burden on our residents because we've got such a poor work scale in terms of pay for many of our citizens. It is also imperative that not only we keep the energy rates accountable, but we also provide opportunities for our citizens to actually be able to make more money and to sustain themselves. We live in an economy that we've got too many people working at $2 plus tips. I'm very excited about the fact that I was one of the leaders to propose and promote and get passed the fact that all city employees now make a minimum $15 an hour, and all of our contractors have to pay a minimum $15. That's not the end. We got to keep pressing. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that our people have the resources necessary to be able to pay all of their bills. So it's also incumbent upon us to try to move forward to level those scales also. Now, as it relates to Entergy, they have been, the maintenance that needs to take place is not just Entergy New Orleans, it's Entergy system-wide, because the lines that collapsed didn't collapse in Orleans Parish. They were not within the jurisdiction of the New Orleans City Council. They were in the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission. So we've got to work with those guys to also make sure that the power that comes into New Orleans can get here, because those transmission lines collapsed outside. Now, by no means are we believing that Entergy New Orleans has done everything that it can do, but we will continue to press them to do all that they can do to try to upgrade and modernize this system. Wait, was that to stop?
No.
Wait.
Oh, you still on? Okay, go.
Okay. So anyway, the regulatory authority of Entergy in Orleans Parish does vest with the City Council. And I have been on the side of the residents and the ratepayers from day one, and will always continue to do that. Now, my opponent likes to talk about the fact that I worked for Entergy. I certainly did, and I'm proud of that. But my work was good enough that the city of New Orleans came to hire me from Entergy. Now, when you're good enough that the people you're working against want you to come work for them, that must indicate your skill set. Now, I wish I could tell you that there's only one person that can make these decisions on how the regulation should be, but it's not. It's a whole collective. And not only does one council member have the authority, we all do. So I collectively work with my colleagues to get done what we can done, and we'll continue to do that. Entergy is going to be here. If we transition to more green infrastructure, I'm 100% in support of that, but that's not going to happen today. It's going to happen over time. It's not something that can happen immediately, and I promise you I will continue to keep them accountable and try to make sure that we do not have any outages. But the realistic point, we are going to have some, and we got to hold them to get them fixed as fast as they can fix them if they happen, but the goal is to make sure that we don't have any.
Thank you. Ms. Harris?
Mr. Banks was a paid Entergy consultant. Let me say that again. Mr. Banks was a paid Entergy consultant. He also worked for Legend Consulting, who advocated for the gas-powered plant that did not get up and running when it should have during Hurricane Ida. I'm with you. I drive around the streets and I still see power lines down. I see transmission things on the ground. There are lines that are still down. Entergy failed us during Hurricane Ida and was not properly regulated. You cannot regulate someone who has paid you in the past. Mr. Banks did not disclose that conflict of interest until he was approached by one of the constituents. I have the video, Monique Harden, called him out because he had not disclosed his prior work for Entergy when he was elected for city council. I absolutely vow not to take any money from Entergy and to disclose any conflicts of interest that come before me. Frankly, Mr. Banks should be taken out of any vote on regulating Entergy because of that fundamental conflict of interest. Now let me talk about what I would do. I don't think that the constituents of District B should be paying for Hurricane Ida repairs. However, at the same time, we don't know exactly what happened, so I support Helena Moreno's push to investigate what exactly happened during Hurricane Ida. I was here after the storm hit. I, like you, was in the dark for, I think, 8 or 9 days. I was here volunteering in the dark at Bethlehem Lutheran Church, providing meals and food to people. Mr. Banks actually saw me out there and complimented me out there. But those are things that can't happen. They just can't happen in New Orleans, and they shouldn't happen in New Orleans. So I vow to regulate Entergy heavily. And I just want you to know that after Hurricane Ida, there was an actual rate increase. So everyone should check their bills to see how much more they went up after Hurricane Ida, because they absolutely did. On what we can do in the future, we need to focus on green energy solutions. We are a windy city, as we all know. We are a city that's surrounded by water. And wind and water can power the grid. We also have solar. It's a beautiful day outside, so there's solar energy alternatives. New Orleans can be a hub of green energy infrastructure, which can go into creation of jobs and training, so our young people, again, see an opportunity for success in New Orleans. We literally can become a hub of green energy. And that green energy needs to be extended to renters, so that there are microgrids around, so when the next hurricane hits, because the next hurricane will hit, we focus on these microgrids, having solar farms, having the batteries to actually power those. That's something that I will focus on, and I think we need to make Entergy focus on that. There are efficiency seminars that are out there that Entergy puts on, but unfortunately it's not well promoted, especially in our community. They do stuff on the internet, but not everyone has internet access, especially in a poor city like New Orleans. So Entergy needs to be pushed to go out in the community to educate people about weatherization and green energy alternatives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I just want to follow by saying, it's a matter also not just the outages, but the rates that we're paying in Orleans Parish as opposed to other parishes that are regulated by the Public Service Commission. The rates are just over the top.
I agree.
Terry Jones.
I agree with her.
I agree too. I agree too.
I think we all do.
The rates are too high, yes.
Yeah, because basically, I mean, how to fix those things, I don't know. I actually live in the district. I live on Napoleon Avenue.
Okay.
And, Ida took me out I was in Houston for 2 weeks because they got nothing in return for that. Now there's construction in front of my house where actually the construction guy says, I'm like the dump place where they put all the stuff there and then
Yeah.
they fix other stuff around. So I'm going to be disenfranchised for quite a long time. I look at that as some of the problem. I understand I understand that things happen and it's a process. It's always a slow process when somebody's inconveniencing you. But the other side is I'm just kind of concerned. There's a big gentrification going on. They're changing neighborhoods in certain neighborhoods. But that the project right off Washington, that whole area looks destitute. So how you pick and choose where you're going to go and how you pick and choose what neighborhoods you're going to tear up. And also, we don't get anything back or any kind of compensation for being inconvenience. I mean, I still pay my bill and I had no electricity. I don't see any of that being addressed.
Your questions.
So that's my question is twofold, I guess. Why is not being addressed that we're not being compensated for what happened from Ida, and how are we balancing out taking care of the under-income people as they relates to the gentrification people coming in and remodeling houses and stuff.
And who are you addressing it to?
I'll start with Jay Banks.
Okay.
Terry, I have been here my entire life. I know exactly where you live, and gentrification is one of the reasons why I ran for this seat in the first place. We have to be intentional on making sure that New Orleans is open and accessible to everyone. Now, I'm very proud of the fact that I've been at the forefront of affordable housing initiatives to make sure that the impacts of gentrification are blunted as much as possible. I grew up here, born and raised right here, and these neighborhoods do not look like what they used to look like. We have a cancer that has taken over. We have to be understanding that not only should the new New Orleanians have the opportunity to live here, but we can't do that at the expense of the people that have been here. We have a system in place where people move into neighborhoods, renovate them, and then the taxes on the residents that have been there for generations go up. My godmother, Imelda Vance, lived on 4th Street between Barone and Drives, right around the corner where Leslie lives from. As a matter of fact, the family that lived in the house where Leslie lived in now, are kids I played with. They ain't there no more. When these new Orleanians come in and push residents out, it is damaging the fabric and the potential life of New Orleans, because the people that make our economy work are the people that provide the culture, and the people that provide the culture are the ones that are being disenfranchised. This is a major, major issue that we have to focus on. So making sure that we have affordable housing opportunities is something that's absolutely critical, and I'm proud of the work that I've done with that. We are not finished though. We've got to continue. I've been in conversations with the legislature. We tried it and we didn't get it done. We did get some concession. We got the property taxes capped through the efforts of Representative Matthew Willard to get it capped at 10%. That's a great thing, but that's not enough. I'd like to see us go back to a system where those taxes are based on the fact that if you were here before Katrina, you pay one rate, and those people that moved in after, they pay a different rate, because that is when this acceleration of property taxes took place. We're using government to rob people of their homes, and that's wrong. The taxes should be something that people can manage. When people like Leslie move into a neighborhood and they renovate a house, and the people who've been across the street for years, those taxes go up 4 and 5 times. Those people's incomes didn't go up 4 and 5 times, but the taxes do. If they don't pay them, then they lose their houses. There's something wrong with that. We ought to have a structure that allows for the new people to do what they do. If you acknowledge that the house is worth $300,000, then you pay taxes on that. But if I've been living in mine for $50,000 for all these decades, that's what I ought to pay taxes on. My income is not rising to match that. It just makes sense, but the legislature is where that has to happen. I will continue to work towards that. And again, we have made some concessions, but we haven't gotten it all the way yet. The idea of making sure that our indigenous people get to live here is something that is absolutely critical to me, because I'm indigenous. My family's indigenous. Everything I have here is vested in New Orleans, so I see the truth of it. I am a culture bearer. I have been a part of this culture. I have been raised in that. And those people that make this economy work, they have to be allowed to be able to be here, and I'm going to keep fighting for that.
I just have a follow-up. So you're saying, in effect, that the council doesn't have any control over what's going on in the district, that that in fact you can't move anything with those projects looking like they look, or you can't change any of that because it's not in your privy?
Wait, I'm sorry, Terry, tell me specifically what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the gentrification and the fact that the project area is not being touched, and people remodeling other areas in the district. So we don't have control over that?
We don't have control over what those property tax rates are. We do not have control over the ability for people to be able to sell their properties to whoever they choose to sell them to. That is not something that's within the purview of the council. But what we can do is try to work with those people that can control the property taxes to get that burden released, to get it reduced to what it is. It is not in the purview of the city council to be able to change the taxes. If it was up to me, it would have already been done. I'm telling you, I see a plan where you do not, the assessor has a process that they attach a value on an artificial expectation. If you tell me that my house is worth $300,000 and I sell it for $250,000, you don't give me a credit.
Thank you,
but
sir.
If I was,
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I gave you 30 more seconds to answer. Thank you. We're gonna move.
Terry,
We'll rebuttal later. You can add it to your end, okay? Thank you.
if I understand the question is why are some areas neglected and why other areas looks brand spanking new? I don't have an answer for that. Where I live in Central City, where I choose to live in Central City, where my neighbors actually know me, know my name, celebrate with me. So I am not a gentrifier, despite what Mr. Banks has called me. But my neighborhood has tires everywhere, abandoned tires everywhere. City Council absolutely has the power to direct Department of Public Works to go drive around Central City and pick up the tires. That's one of my first plans to do, is to actually drive the streets, to be out in the community, to see what the neighborhood looks like. I don't know that Mr. Banks has done that, because if you're like me, you see those tires everywhere. You see the trash everywhere. I was over on South Claiborne, sign waving. There are giant potholes where literally my car got stuck. I had to slow my car down over where our people live. Now, Mr. Banks has been in politics for 30 years, and I want the listeners to ask themselves, is it better? Has it been better over the past 30 years? The gentrification issue didn't just happen in the last 4 years. It's been happening. And what did Mr. Banks do to prevent that? One of the things that he could have done is enforce the short-term rental rules. My neighbors are being pushed out of the neighborhood because of short-term rentals. There are rules out there, regulations out there, but no enforcement out there. So there are many illegal short-term rentals in Central City. What I think needs to happen is that we properly enforce those rules so folks aren't being pushed out, and that we go back into the community and ask whether or not these short-term rental rules are working for the community or against the community. And that's something that I plan to do when I take office, at least quarterly town halls with people where they are, so that they know and they can tell me their needs. I will be open, honest, transparent, and accountable when I take this office. Now, the other issue, Terry, remind me?
The public housing.
The public housing back there. Yeah, so Mr. Banks says that he's an advocate for affordable housing. Let me talk about that development and also the Browns Dairy development. The Browns Dairy development, which is in Central City, had been planned. There were developers who were going to build affordable housing to sell. And that project was actually at very low cost. There was financing behind it. They were going to actually self-finance many of the homeowners. That project was killed. It died on the vine under Mr. Banks' watch. So we need to really invest in affordable housing opportunities. We need to invest in our community. I think beautification projects need to happen, but we need to do the very basics, getting the tires off the streets, fixing the potholes, doing basic cleanup, mowing city lawns. None of that is happening right now in District B.
Okay, so my first question was about the challenges of the district. Now I want to ask questions that challenge you, each of you. I think it's important that the people know who they're voting for. So for you, Ms. Harris, I'll start with you again.
Sure.
In the last 3.5 years, who are you? I mean, what have you done? Tell me, in the last 3.5 years, what projects in the community that you've led, that you've been a part of? Why should people vote for you?
So that's a great question, and I'm happy to sit here and let people get to know me. Like I said, I was an attorney for a long time. I represented Mardi Gras Indians. I represented people like B. Mike. So I'm in the community actually helping Black artists, Black businesses get up on their feet, protect their intellectual property, which is the essence of our community and the culture bearers. So I've been out there doing that work, many times pro bono, many times at discounted rates, and I'm happy to stand on my legal record. I continue to practice law and represent some fabulous clients here in New Orleans.
So my question is, what community efforts have you led in the last 3.5 years?
Sure. So I've been on the board of Yaya for many years, I think 6 years now, and you see that project on LaSalle in Louisiana. It's a beautiful project, and we actually work with kids to teach art and entrepreneurship. So I was actually tapped to be the next president, but I am running here instead, so I don't quite have the time. But I've helped lead the efforts to recruit kids into that program. I've helped fundraise for that program, and it's essential to the community. So Yaya does not only serve the kids who are Yayas, but it actually serves the surrounding community with various family days and things like that. So I've been out there in the community with Yaya. I'm a member of the New Orleans Bar Association and actually a board member of the New Orleans Bar Association, and we do a lot of philanthropic things through the Bar Association. And I will stand on my record at Loyola. I was there for 2.5 years as the chief of staff, and let me tell you, by the time I left, we had the most diverse classes in the school's history. And I was part of that effort. So I've been laser focused on moving the city forward, moving our institutions forward, like Xavier, like Loyola, and making sure that there are opportunities for people. Many of our students at Loyola, our diverse students, are New Orleanians. And so, again, when COVID hit, and again, I was the COVID queen, we needed to provide basic hotspots, computers, laptops, so that our students, especially our disadvantaged students, could continue to do their work. I count that as serving the community. So I've been here. I've been in this community since 1999. I've not only been on the board of Yaya, I was on the board of the Renette Society, which is the Black Legal Society. When I was a younger attorney, typically younger attorneys do that. But I've been in this community working, and I stand on my record.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
Mr. Banks, tough question for you. On the current city council, I don't think you've gotten any endorsements from any of the council members, maybe one. Does that mean you're a bad colleague? Does that mean that you aren't easy to work with? What do you attribute that to?
I attribute that to because these people were all involved in races themselves. So at the end of the day, I understand how this process works. They were all running, and they've got to have their own priorities as being theirs. Now, I'm proud of the endorsements that I do have, from Governor Edwards to Mayor Cantrell to every state representative that represents District B, to the senator that represents District B, to all of the school board members that represent District B, from the Alliance for Good Government to VOTE, to our endorsements from Democrats and Republicans, ministers. We had a ministers' breakfast yesterday where 61 ministers showed up to pray for me and to get the message out as to why the people need to go out and vote for me. So while I do understand the mechanisms that are involved in the political process, I get it why I don't have that. But I'm proud of the ones that I do have and look forward to working with whoever's on the council when I go back.
Great. Now here's the next question, even tougher probably. You recently, we've already established that you were a consultant for Entergy. You recently voted to increase Entergy's rates. Can you explain why that was a good move?
You have to have the system to be able to sustain itself. Entergy is a business. We will keep the rates as low as we can keep them, but they have to have enough to be able to function. If they go belly up, then we're all in the dark. It's very simple. I mean, nobody wants to pay more for anything, but the truth is we keep them held to the line and keep those increases at an absolute minimum. They will not get 1 penny more than they absolutely have to sustain the business. And that's just a fact. Now, my opponent can say all she wants about she's not going to let anything happen, but the truth be told, this is the real world. And we've got to function with real world realities that say certain things have to happen. Even though they aren't palatable and not fun and people may not want to have them, certain things have to happen, and that's just the truth.
Gotcha, thank you. Well, I'll pass my mic on to Ms. Campbell Rock from the Louisiana Weekly.
So, education. Now, as I understand it, and I hope I'm not tipping the hand, but there will be, and you guys can look for a call to action to return the Orleans Parish schools back to the public school district and board that we have. In your district, the James Singleton School has been seeing some problems. I think there's some financial fraud or whatever the issue is, but as a person who had kids, a grandson in the system now, and who has fought against privatizing public monies for private quasi-public schools, the so-called charter school system. My question we'll start with Ms. Harris. My question is, are you in support of returning the schools back to the public school system, to a public school system? Because the city does collect millages that go to the so-called public school system, which is a charter school system, which is not. It's supposed to be predicated on choice, but that's not really the case.
So that's a difficult question. We are in the system that's already established. And I know that there are people who, like my neighbor, choose to send their kids to a charter school because of the mission of the school. So, for example, Miss Sandra's grandkids that she takes care of go to Bricolage Academy because she likes that inclusive Montessori mission of bricolage. I understand it's a burden for her to get across town to take them there, and that's a problem. But I think that we can look at a combination of charter schools and public schools. I went to public school. I went to a really nice public school with teachers who were, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, had relationships with them. I know that's not the case right now. There are a lot of Teach for America people who come in and leave the school system, and so there isn't that opportunity to build those relationships. So I think we can look at a hybrid system. I'm not an expert in any means on charter schools. What I am really good at is getting experts together in a room and voices of everyone in a room and hashing out the problem. The good things about the charter system and the good things about the public school system and the bad things and the bad things. I'm really good at having those meetings, and as a council person, I absolutely promise to hear all voices and make a decision based on that. The Singleton Charter School is a failing charter school, and there is $1 million missing. Somehow the Dryades YMCA, where Councilman Banks still holds an office, is involved in that as well and is under investigation. And so we can't have failing charter schools. We can't have no accountability, which is what's happening right now. We need to hold, if we are going to stay in this charter school system, the people who run those charter schools accountable. And we need to be here for the people.
So let me just add, before Mr. Banks answers,
Sure.
let me just tell you this. The majority of the charter schools in Orleans Parish are failing. As a matter of fact, they are doing, on one model, 15% worse than they were when they first started. So there is no doubt that our children are being failed by this charter school system. So most of us in the community would prefer that public dollars be used for public schools. Mr. Banks.
Cece, I'm glad you pointed that out, that the charter system has not done what it was set up to do. So I am in support of reverting back to where we were with having the schools run by the school board. There's no qualifying that. Now, if you've got a good charter that is working, then I want our children to have the best opportunities that they can have. But the truth be told, my opponent loves to make these scurrilous allegations against me. I am no longer employed with the YMCA. The truth be told, that all of these supposed improprieties took place after I was no longer employed there. Now, she is very adept at trying to paint this picture that somehow I'm involved in something that doesn't exist. The Attorney General, the Legislative Auditor, all of those folks have looked at what happened at the school. You've heard nothing else from them because there is no $1 million missing. The question was, where was the $1 million allocated? There's not one accusation of a penny being taken anywhere. The school was audited on a regular basis, and all of that is being worked out. They are in negotiations with the school board to figure out just where to categorize this, but that's irrelevant. The truth is, my opponent is continuously trying to paint the picture of something that is non-existent. If you cannot talk about your own record, then you have to destroy mine. I have not been involved in any impropriety in my entire life. That is a fact. Now, whatever took place, whatever miscommunication, whatever miscategorization that took place at the Y happened after I was no longer there. Now, am I a Y kid? Yes, I'm extremely proud of that. Probably some people in this room are Y kids. The truth be told, that to disparage that historically black significant organization in this community is ridiculous. And where's it going to stop? This week it's the Y? Well, when her people tell her she needs to go and bash something else, what is she going to do then? It's the Y this week, but what can it be next week? The YMCA has been there providing services for this community for more than 100 years. And I think it's ridiculous for someone to come in here and try to disparage that legacy with something that is totally baseless. Now, as it goes back to me, no. Nothing happened any point where I was involved with anything because there was nothing there to happen. I no longer work there, having worked there for years. Now, am I a volunteer there? Yes, and I will continue to be because I believe in the mission. And I think it's totally disingenuous for someone to sit here and say they're for the community, but then to try to trash an organization that has demonstrated its qualifications and its commitment and its successes in the community. It just shows the hypocrisy that is there. People will say whatever they think they need to say to get you to believe that they're here, but the truth is, you got to ask them what their real motivations are. And this is an embarrassment that we have to keep talking about this with someone that has not demonstrated a commitment to the community. I'm very in support of Yaya. I give money to Yaya every year, but Yaya is one organization. There are hundreds of them throughout this city. Why is it that there's only one that they can name? The truth be told, that I'm very proud of the record that I've had in this community. It is untarnished and will continue to be.
Thank you, sir. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us at the Black-Owned Media Coalition debate. We'll be right back. So much for sharing your ideas, your records. This is Leslie Harris and Jay Banks. We are at the Black-Owned Media Coalition debate. We're going to give you 3 minutes to do your closing remarks, and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Banks.
Well, thank you. Thank you all so much for doing this. I think that giving the citizens the opportunity to see what we stand for, what we talk about, where we've been and where we're going is absolutely critical to making sure that the voters have the information necessary to make the right choices. I have been involved in this community for my entire, and I hope to utilize the city council platform to continue to help provide services to people. But I got to tell you, this has been a very frustrating process because the voters have not been given the opportunity to actually hear any substantive debate on what folks are planning on doing. This has all been about attacking me. Now, this is not the election for the 7th grade class president where a candidate can come in and say we're going to have recess every day, all day, and make it work. You've got to have substantive solutions and substantive answers to give folks a chance to make a decision. My opponent, and I want you all to play this debate back today, listen to the answers. There haven't been any solutions. It's all been about talking bad about me. And the truth is that having pie in the sky, no substance, reality-based solutions is something that I think does a disservice to the voters. I'm proud of my record. It's there for you to see. I can stand up and talk about any issue that you want to talk about and show you what I've done in it. This isn't all veiled promises. This isn't all just what I think I'm going to do. We have to work in the real world. We have to be able to use the resources and the authority that we have to make the conditions best for our people. And we can talk about all of that. I'm going to snap my fingers and make stuff happen, but that's really can't happen. I really would appreciate the opportunity to have a substantive debate, though, to actually get real ideas and real solutions from my opponent. I don't know what she stands for. Some of it I may support, but I can't support anything that the only answer is what Jay Banks hasn't done, and Jay Banks is a horrible person, and Jay Banks is a bad guy, and all of that stuff. It would be helpful to the residents to be able to actually have a real answer to a question just once. Just talk about specifically what you are going to do. Don't even mention me. But unfortunately, that has not been the case, and I hope that the residents and the voters can see the difference. I bring real solutions. I'm not ducking and hiding. I'm telling you where I've been, where I'm going, what I intend to do with real substance. Reality-based substance. Not Pollyanna, not pie in the sky, not I'm going to, but the truth is that we can do what we can do, and there are things that we would want to do, but I can't promise you I can get them done without having the ability to do it. I ask you all to please consider my record, please compare the two of us, and please look at who is best suited to serve this district, and give me your vote. My name is J.H. Banks. I'm number 40. Look at my record and give me your opportunity to continue to serve you.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Ms. Harris.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for your questions. I want to thank the Black-owned media for having this forum. I want to thank all of you for your endorsements in this race. You endorse me because I have substantive, real solutions. I'm not like Mr. Banks, who says that he cannot help with crime and he cannot fix potholes. That came out of his mouth.
That is a lie, and you know that.
We have it on tape. We have it on tape, and I invite people to go on my website, and we will run it again. So Mr. Banks does not have solutions for fundamental problems that impact New Orleanians and our community. I want to focus on the basics. My campaign is nothing fancy, but let's get these streets fixed. Let's get our neighborhoods cleaned up so that we can be proud of living in New Orleans. Let's focus on helping to solve the violent crime issue that plagues our community. You saw the shooting that just happened yesterday that was random. We can't continue to have this. We cannot continue to have crime be rampant in New Orleans. And all of those things drive economic development. We have not talked about economic development in this forum. I want to focus on fixing those two fundamental problems, crime and infrastructure, so that we can focus on economic development and jobs in New Orleans. We need to attract companies that are not just tourism-based, but are tech-based, that are green energy-based, so that we can provide opportunities for everyone, not just our top donors, not just some people, but for everyone. Real jobs that pay money. We need to fix those two fundamental issues, infrastructure and crime, so that we can grow our economy here in New Orleans. We could be a premier city. We can be a destination for clean energy, but there's no vision. There's a lack of vision in District B. So while Mr. Banks calls me Pollyanna, which by the way is an 11-year-old white girl, and I am not an 11-year-old white girl. While Mr. Banks calls me Pollyanna, I have real solutions. I have the experience to implement change. Look at my record at Loyola. We turned that university around financially. I headed up those efforts. I helped with our disaster management, actually led disaster management, led our COVID response. I'm a proven leader despite what Mr. Banks says. And you can look on my website for real solutions. I literally have a platform on Entergy and what we can do to address the high rates, the outages, and the broken infrastructure. So visit my website, harrisfornola.com. I also want to say this. I have the endorsement of the Democratic Party.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's your time. I want to thank you guys both again for your insight, for your information. We appreciate your ideas, and we want everybody to get out and vote. December 11th. Today is the last day to vote early, so if you need to, get out there and vote, folks. Thanks again to our panelists. Appreciate each and every one of you. You know where you work.
That it is.
You know, I really appreciate each and every one of you. Again, to the Black-owned Media Coalition, this has been a very enlightening time, and we want to thank you again. And good luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Have a great day right here on WBOK 1230 AM.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.